All right, get ready to dive deep, everyone, because today we're exploring some really mind-bending ideas about human potential. We're taking a close look at a presentation by Dr. Siva Somalanaram. He's a biology professor, but he doesn't shy away from weaving in some pretty intriguing philosophical concepts. And the big question he tackles, well, it's something we all think about. Can we actually have a say in how we age? Can we slow it down? Maybe even reverse it?
You know, it's really interesting how Dr. Somasundaram just jumps right into this question. He kind of assumes you already know the basics about like telomeres and aging,
Yeah.
instead of rehashing all that. He goes straight to this radical idea. What if we could activate that enzyme, telomerase, the one that keeps those little molecular clocks ticking in our cells? What if we could activate it in our regular body cells?
Okay, but hold on a second. Didn't we just say telomerase is active in cancer cells too? That doesn't exactly sound like something you want to be messing around with.
Exactly. That's the crucial point. Uncontrolled telomerase is a huge problem. But Dr. Somasundaram's hypothesis is that we can learn to use telomerase the way germ cells do, without triggering that uncontrolled growth. It's like figuring out the secret to how they reset their aging clocks safely.
So what you're saying is that instead of just accepting that our cells inevitably age, we might actually be able to hit the pause button. That's pretty wild. Where's the evidence for this, though?
Okay, so that's where things get really interesting. Dr. Somasundaram points to the power of the mind. He suggests that the key to slowing down aging might not be some fancy pill or a genetic tweak. It might be in our thoughts.
Wait, hold on. You're saying we can think our way to younger cells? Come on, isn't that a bit of a stretch?
Well, I know it sounds a little far-fetched, maybe, but he presents a pretty compelling argument. He defines the mind as thought force, this powerful energy that can shape our reality. He even goes so far as to say our entire body is mind in action, not just the brain, but every single cell.
Okay, I gotta admit, you've got me intrigued. But I'm still a bit skeptical. Is he suggesting that just thinking positive thoughts will magically reverse aging? It can't be that simple.
Oh,
Huh?
definitely not. It's not about wishful thinking, not at all. It's much deeper than that. Dr. Somasundaram proposes that the mind exists in three phases. The solid, which is our physical body, the liquid, which is our life force, or what some traditions call prana, and then there's this fascinating concept of the invisible mind, which he calls transbioplasma.
Transbioplasma, that sounds like something straight out of Star Trek. What exactly? I asked that.
Well, he describes it as this kind of bioelectromagnetic energy field, an invisible force that links our thoughts to our physical cells, like a bridge between the intangible world of our minds and the concrete reality of our bodies.
So he's saying this transbioplasma is like the key to unlocking all this hidden potential we have, including the potential to influence aging. That's a pretty bold claim. Where did he even get this idea from? Is there any science to back this up?
He draws on a lot of different sources. He looks at scientific research, but he also brings in wisdom from ancient traditions. For example, he cites these studies from Harvard showing that meditation can actually increase telomere length.
Wait, are you serious? So practicing mindfulness could actually affect those molecular clocks we were talking about, like
I
measurably.
think that's what the research is suggesting, yeah. And this is just one piece of the puzzle. He also goes into this whole concept of the subconscious mind, suggesting that we're often operating on autopilot, you know, controlled by beliefs and patterns that we've internalized without even realizing it.
So are you saying we're basically prisoners of our own minds? Limited by all this subconscious programming? That's kind of bleak, isn't it? Are we just doomed to age according to whatever our subconscious dictates?
Not necessarily, not at all. He emphasizes that we have the power to break free from those limitations. And it starts with developing willpower. He believes we can strengthen our willpower through practices like fasting and exercise. It's like pushing our physical limits to train our minds for greater control.
So it's like a mind over matter approach, right? Using physical discipline to build up mental resilience. But how does that actually translate into influencing our cells, slowing down aging?
Well, that's where the concept of biotransformation comes in. Dr. Somasundaram lays out these 5 specific attitudes that he believes are essential for driving positive change, even at the cellular level. It's not just about willpower. It's about cultivating a whole new way of being.
5 attitudes, huh? All right, let's break those down and see what they're all about.
Yeah, these 5 attitudes, they really get to the core of Dr. Somasundaram's whole philosophy, He starts with a balanced, raw food diet. He really emphasizes nourishing our bodies with natural, unprocessed foods.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we've all heard that saying, you are what you eat, right?
Right, exactly. But he doesn't stop at just a diet. The second attitude is what he calls theoretical training of the mind. Basically, it's all about feeding our minds with knowledge, expanding our understanding of the world. He even suggests things like watching documentaries and artistic films as part of this.
So it's about being a lifelong learner, constantly seeking out new information, new perspectives. I like that. What about the other three attitudes?
Well, the next one is respect for truth. Dr. Somasundaram really emphasizes living authentically in alignment with our values. Being honest with ourselves, being honest with others, striving to live a life that reflects our true selves.
That's a powerful concept, especially in today's world where it's so easy to get caught up in all the external pressures and expectations. It sounds like he's really advocating for a deep sense of self-awareness and integrity.
Absolutely. And then there's paced breathing,
Yeah.
which we can practice through things like yoga and diaphragmatic breathing.
We talked about this a little earlier, right? Using our breath to influence our nervous system, to calm our minds. It's amazing how something as simple as breathing can have such a huge impact on our well-being.
I know, right? And finally, we come to the fifth attitude, life consciousness. This one's a little more abstract, I guess you could say, but it's really about cultivating a deep sense of joy and presence in each moment.
So not just going through the motions, but really savoring life, experiencing each moment with intention. Is that what he means by blissful states?
Exactly. He believes that by practicing these 5 attitudes, we can unlock a deeper level of awareness and actually experience those states of joy and fulfillment. And he ties this back to the concept of transbioplasma. He suggests that these positive states can influence our physical bodies through that invisible energy field.
Okay, so it's all coming full circle. He's saying that by cultivating these positive attitudes, we can create this feedback loop between our minds and bodies, and that leads to some pretty profound transformation. But is this all just theory, or does he offer any practical guidance on how to actually put these ideas into practice?
Well, that's where meditation comes in. Dr. Somasundaram sees meditation as like this core practice. It helps us develop all 5 attitudes and tap into that power of the mind. He even provides specific instructions, techniques.
Yeah.
He goes beyond that basic idea of just sitting still and emptying your mind.
I've got to be honest, I've always been kind of intimidated by meditation, but the way he describes it, it sounds more accessible. Like something anyone can learn and benefit from.
Right. He really emphasizes that it's not about achieving some perfect state of emptiness. It's about observing our thoughts without judgment and gently guiding our attention back to the present moment. He even compares thoughts to waves and words to particles, suggesting that wrong thinking can attract negative experiences.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. It makes you really think about the power of our words and our thoughts. It's like we're constantly creating our reality through our inner dialogue. But he also acknowledges that meditation can be tough, right?
Yeah, he's very upfront about the challenges. Remember, he talked about a high dropout rate, mainly because it takes discipline, commitment, but he also emphasizes that the potential rewards are huge.
So it's like anything else that's worthwhile. It takes effort, it takes dedication.
Hmm.
Now, what about those other tools he mentioned? I'm really curious about that healing power of music.
Oh yeah, he has a whole section on that. It's fascinating. He talks about how different types of music can impact our physiology. He cites examples like Bach for lowering blood pressure, Vivaldi for epilepsy.
Hold on, seriously. Is there any scientific evidence for that? Or is it more of a vibes thing?
It's kind of a mix, I'd say. Some of it is based on anecdotal evidence, traditional wisdom, but there's also more and more research coming out on the impact of music on the brain and the body. For instance, some studies show that certain rhythms and frequencies can actually entrain brain waves. They can induce relaxation or focus, depending on the music.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've definitely felt the power of music to shift my mood or my energy level for sure.
Right. And he also goes into detail about paced breathing techniques, particularly diaphragmatic breathing.
Right, which goes back to that whole willpower aspect. Gaining control over our breath to gain control over our minds and bodies.
Exactly. And it all circles back to that central message of consciously choosing joy, living with awareness, with intention, experiencing those blissful states he talks about.
So it's a whole being approach, right? Not just focusing on physical symptoms, but cultivating a positive mindset, a sense of deep connection to life. But he's not saying we can just magically think our way to perfect health, is he?
Oh no, he's very realistic about the challenges. He makes it clear that it's hard work, but the potential rewards are huge. He even compares it to physical exercise. He says meditation is like a workout for the brain.
Instead of just passively accepting that our brains inevitably decline with age, we can actually train them to stay sharp, to stay adaptable. I really like that idea. What about this zero-point energy concept he brings up? That sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
I know, right? It's definitely one of the more out there concepts he presents. He suggests that zero-point energy, this quantum field of energy that exists everywhere. He suggests it might actually play a role in cellular rejuvenation processes.
So we could be tapping into an unlimited source of energy for healing and regeneration. That's a bold claim. Is there any real science to support that, or is it mostly just speculation at this point?
He does acknowledge that more research is needed in this area. But he points to the research on meditation and its effects, the impact on telomere length, stress hormones, immune response, as evidence that our thoughts and practices can have a real measurable impact on our physical well-being.
So the zero-point energy thing might be a bit far out, but the underlying principle of the mind-body connection, that's backed by solid science.
Exactly. And that's what makes Dr. Somasundaram's presentation so fascinating. He blends cutting-edge scientific research with ancient wisdom and philosophical insights. He really pushes us to think about the interconnectedness of our minds and bodies.
It's definitely a lot to process, but I'm really curious to dig into those practical techniques he offers, to explore them in more detail. Let's dive into those and see what specific tools he recommends, tools for actually putting these ideas into action. All right, so we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive, from telomeres and transbioplasma to some conscious programming and paced breathing. But I'm ready to get down to brass tacks. What does Dr. Somasundaram actually suggest we do to tap into all this potential?
Well, he spends a good chunk of time on specific meditation techniques. And it's not just the typical sit in silence and clear your mind kind of meditation either. He talks about guided meditations, visualizations, focusing on the breath, even mantras and chanting.
Oh, that's good to hear. I think a lot of people try meditation once, get frustrated when their thoughts won't just shut off, and then they just give up. It's nice to know there are different ways to approach it.
Exactly. And Dr. Somasundaram acknowledges that it takes practice, discipline. But he frames it as a journey of self-discovery, not a race to empty your mind.
Speaking of journeys, we touched on the healing power of music earlier. I'm really curious to hear more about that. Does he recommend specific types of music for specific ailments?
He does. It gets pretty specific. Like, he suggests Bach for lowering blood pressure, Vivaldi for epilepsy, even Mozart for boosting cognitive function.
Wow, that's fascinating. Is that based on actual research or more like traditional wisdom?
It's a bit of both. Some of it's based on anecdotal evidence and practices that have been around for centuries. But there's also more and more scientific research being done on this. Research exploring the impact of music on the brain and body. There's evidence that certain rhythms and frequencies can actually entrain brainwaves, which can influence our mood, our sleep cycles, all sorts of things.
So we probably shouldn't ditch our prescription meds just yet, but it sounds like music can definitely play a role in our well-being. What about those breathing exercises you talked about?
Paced breathing, especially diaphragmatic breathing. That's really central to his whole approach. He even gives step-by-step instructions and links to videos that demonstrate the technique.
Oh, that's helpful. I've heard of diaphragmatic breathing, but I never really knew how to do it properly. It's amazing to think that something as basic as breathing can have such a powerful effect on both our physical and mental state.
He really emphasizes the importance of consciously controlling our breath as a way to regulate our nervous system. Reduce stress. It's like hitting the reset button on our fight or flight response.
And that ties back into the whole willpower thing, right? Learning to master our breath as a way to gain control over our minds and bodies.
Exactly. And he connects this to that fifth attitude, the life consciousness idea we were talking about. It's about being fully present in each moment, finding joy in the simple things, choosing to experience life from a place of gratitude and awareness.
So it's not just about hacking our biology with a bunch of techniques and tricks. It's about cultivating a whole new way of being, a more mindful and intentional approach to life.
That's it, exactly. It's about recognizing that we have more agency than we think. We have the power to shape our reality through our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions.
That's incredibly empowering, but he's not sugarcoating things, is he? He acknowledges that this isn't always easy.
Oh, definitely not. He's very honest about the challenges. He mentions that high dropout rate from meditation, because it does require discipline and commitment. This isn't a quick fix. It's an ongoing practice.
It's like anything else worth pursuing. It takes effort, dedication. But based on what we've discussed today, it seems like the potential rewards are definitely worth it. This whole presentation has been a wild ride. I feel inspired, but also a little overwhelmed by all the possibilities.
It is a lot to take in, that's for sure. But I think the key takeaway is this. We are not just victims of our genes or our circumstances. We have the power to influence our health and well-being at a very fundamental level.
That's a powerful message to leave with, and it gives us a lot to think about. If we can truly shape our reality through our thoughts, beliefs, and actions, what kind of future are we choosing to create for ourselves?
That's the question, isn't it? And as always, we encourage you to check out the source material for yourselves and continue your own exploration of this amazing world of human potential.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring.